This here thing is on and working. What is up, everybody? Random FPV here for the TBS couch. Gonna be doing an ESC swap on this little teeny tiny guy here. If you guys are out there in the chat, let me know. Give me a thumbs up, give me a like, tell me you see me, you hear me, everything looks good and sounds good. I'd really appreciate it. Let's see. That looks good, that looks good. Go here. Looks good, that looks good. Here we go. There's exhilarating. What's up, brother? Good morning to you. How is the sound? How is the screen? Everything looking good? I'm a little groggy looking, so don't mind me. I rolled out of bed not too long ago and I'm still half asleep. What's up, the FPV life? What's up, George? How are you? Mike, what's good, brother? Good to see you, Frosty. Let me get the old soldering iron on here. Sounds okay? Good, good, good. That's good. I'm not got any music going today, guys. The last time when I did the music, it was okay for YouTube, but Facebook made the audio like absolute crap on the playback, and it was pretty much like you couldn't even listen. I didn't even want to listen to it, so I don't think we're going to be doing the music too much anymore. Glad to see all you guys are doing good on this Tuesday morning. I'm doing pretty good myself. Finally got my car stuff rectified. A member of the FPV community actually donated a car to me, which has blown my mind. It's probably the nicest thing anybody has ever done for me. Haven't really discussed it much. I can't decide whether or not I want to kind of make a big deal about it or not, so to speak, because I haven't talked to the person that gave it to me and to whether they want that. So until the time of talking to them, I'll hold off and just say somebody in the FPV community literally gave me a new car. Well, not new car, but a car. I've had a lot of blessings lately in my life. I've had a lot of struggles in my past, and I've been trying recently to, I guess you could say, do the right thing every chance I can. And probably for about the last 6-8 months, a year, I've just really been trying to focus on, good actions and good energy and putting good energy out into the world. And it's finally starting to seem like it's coming back, which is really beautiful. I've had some blessings in the past. Hey, Mindless, speaking of, from Mindless FPV, who, when I started Quad House, helped us out quite a bit getting started. And, I'm blessed to be on this live stream. Got a lot of blessings to be thankful for. So one thing I want this stream to do is maybe motivate you guys and get you excited about flying, excited about the hobby. If nothing else, maybe you can share in my excitement, because right now I'm pretty fired up on the whole thing. Yeah, it's a 2002 Volkswagen Jetta 1.8 turbo. Nothing fancy, but I mean, it's got good tires on it. It's solid running vehicle. Definitely better than a truck that I was putting new parts on every 2 days only to get stranded again, right? So, and ironically, my wife's father has pulled that truck apart and thinks that the starter I bought a new starter for it. He thinks the starter was bad. And so we're looking at putting another starter on that, and we may end up with a vehicle for my wife too. So that would be amazing, because we were down pretty much to one vehicle for the last year. So let me let you guys know what I'm working on. So I've got it's a little furry bee, like 130, 150 millimeter quad. It's one of those like you buy it all ready to go deals. And the customer that purchased it, it was dead out of the box from the ESC, from what I can tell. I can't get the ESCs to read MBL Heli or anything like that. I can't get any communication, can't get, the normal stuff, don't get any tones, all the stuff you're used to. So what I'm going to do is pull this ESC off. I've ordered a replacement ESC, which I'm hoping is the direct replacement, because there was no real markings on it. I just kind of had to visually compare ESCs to try to get the right one, so I'm really not sure I've got the right thing, but either way it ought to work. The new ESC is a 28 amp, pretty hefty ESC. I actually would probably run that stack on a full-size quad if I had to, so I'm gonna pull these old leads off the old ESC first. If you got old stubborn ESCs like these that were the solder from the factories, more than likely lead free, turn your temperature up about 10 degrees, and when you're applying heat, apply heat for just a little bit longer than you normally would. In this case, I'm not that worried about it because the ESC's toast anyway, so who cares if I mess something up taking off the old stuff. But just a quick pro tip for you guys there. Do good, get good. That's right, Nerdcopter. I've really been trying to truly embrace that in my life recently. Just a good karma kind of thing. And I'm telling you, man, it's amazing. And having the faith in it and doing the right thing when nobody's looking, all that kind of stuff, it really goes a long way. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I was some major criminal a year ago or anything. I was very self-centered, and I was more worried about my own success and stuff like that, you could say. And recently I've just, last 8 months or so, I've just stopped caring about myself, and things have really helped. I've got more going on now than I did then, ironically. So we all get selfish at times. I mean, what else is there to do? You live inside your own body. Of course you're going to think about you first, But I think I had maybe gone a little further than the average amount of selfish, so. Let's see. All right, so we've got 3 of our motors disconnected. The FPV Life says, FPV saved my life. You wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for FPV. I can understand that, the FPV Life. I'm a recovering addict. For anybody that doesn't know that, it may come as a big shock to you. I don't know, or you may say, oh, well, I knew that already, and whatever. I don't care. It's my past. I developed a strong addiction to some strong, prescription medication, and that was like an 8-year period of my life. When I stopped using was when my son was born, which was about 5 years ago. And things are tough because you are searching for something to fill that gap. I didn't find it until FPV, and that was probably a year later. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I've battled with relapses here and there. I've had issues happen here and there. I find if I get super nervous is a big time when I would relapse. But anyway, long story short, FPV has filled that void. Motorcycles was the closest thing up until FPV, and motorcycles are great, but they're also, you're taking a pretty big chance. And where I live, there's just not a lot of people watch out for bikers around here. So take it easy, Stu. Good to see you, buddy. Or Slew FPV. Okay, so back to this. What I'm going to do now is take my trusty Omnivice, plug my old ESC in here. But yeah, if any of you guys ever want to talk, you ever feel like you need a friend, you're down, whatever, I mean, it doesn't have to be FPV related, just period. Holler at me. I'm try to be available when I can be, and certainly will be available for somebody if they needed to discuss, I don't know, don't go relapsing. Come talk to Chris. It's not worth it. If you're going to relapse on FPV. What I say. So I can already tell by looking at this factory soldered power lead, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get off. You know what, actually? I'm just going to do the easy way. Just trim the leads like that. And we will just make new leads. Sub 24. Good to see you, brother. Thanks, Exhilarating. It is a nifty little vice. Not the cheapest thing in the world, but it works. FPV Life, congrats on 3 years, bro. That's great. Tin up these pads here. Okay. Got our leads on our XT30 tinned up. Now we're going to take our new ESC. We can put a little flux on our pads. And let's tin the pads for the positive and the ground. Okay. Now let's hook up. One. There's two. Okay. What's up, Dante? Just by chance. What's good, John? How are you, brother? Let's see. Wood blocks and blue tape. Hey, man, whatever works, Nerdcopter. What's going on, Atomic? How are you, brother? So let's go ahead and tin up our pads on our ESC here. Take a look at which way is which. Motor 1. Boom. So we want to tin this side. Little flux paste on each side. Atomic, for me it is 10:25 in the morning. What time is it for you, Atomic? Probably like 4 in the morning. One side tinned there. Oh, he just got back from school, so it's probably more like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I would guess, than Atomic. Okay, let's tin up the pads on this side. Sorry I'm not super talkative, guys. It takes a little bit of focus working on these micros. I'll be honest, I don't like working on micros very much. So, forgive me for my lack of enthusiasm. Micro, all this just little teeny tiny stuff is just, it's difficult. Props to anybody who's out there building micros on a consistent basis. Thanks, Dimple. Appreciate it, man. Huge hands makes micros fun. I think you're joking, aren't you? Surely. Another issue of mine, for these micros at least, I've got this big microphone in the way, in between where I'm soldering and where I can see, and it's a good arm's length away, so I may actually scoot a little forward here so I can get in a little closer. Another thing that makes these micros tough is that the factory solder is almost always lead free, so you're coming behind it with good solder with lead in it, and they don't like to mix very well. Exhilarating, have fun at work, brother. Do 4. I figured you were doing a little bit of sarcasm there. Mike, what's up, brother? Yeah, early building, man. 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Let's get it in, bro. Early micro building, nonetheless. It's tedious. Something I wanted to go over before the end of the stream. It's completely not associated to micro building at all, but I've had a couple people hit me up recently about working on some stuff, and I've been kind of tutoring people, I guess you could say, working with them to get their quad knowledge level higher. And there seems to be a lot of people who, I think they're intimidated by all the different components, and it's mainly because they don't really understand like what all everything is, you know, what's doing what. So something I thought about maybe doing was doing some discussion on flight controllers, ESCs, VTXs, RXs, all these acronyms of things that we all know exactly what I just said, but the new person to the hobby may have no idea. Another big one's like TX and RX pads. You know, people want to put a TX to a TX or an RX to an RX and that sort of thing. So after I get this ESC swapped out, I may just do a little bit of basic theory talk, I guess you could say, on what does what is what, and so on. They just strut. Anybody caught that reference? Alright. Yeah, I've got flux on every joint, Kenneth, for sure. Hey Stan, what's good, brother? Alright, one left here on the ESC, and then we'll do a little bit of theory talk. Again, guys, apologize for the silence. These small motor wires on these small pads is tedious. I have trouble talking and walking and chewing gum at the same time too. So. Okay, there we go. So that's got that done, at least. Not the prettiest thing in the world. It's hard to do on these little ones. But they're all soldered, they're going to work. So now we can go move on to the rest of putting that back together. So, let's see. Hemostat, small wires. Yeah, I've got a pair of these pliers. Xuron. They've got real small tips on them that I use a lot of the time for that. But I just find it really difficult, like with these pliers, they're so much bigger than the dang quad. So I'm in here with the wires and they're kind of in my way. I just kind of hold them down with my fingers and solder them. Seems to sometimes work better for me. So let me grab a couple things real quick here, guys, and I want to go over just a little bit of the fundamentals of FPV. I know most of you guys watching are probably like, what? I don't need to know what a flight controller is or an RX or whatever. But I've been getting a lot of questions lately from people on the streams, or in the past, like after the stream, and they're like, hey man, could you cover some theory and just what does what? So I'm going to do that, and they can come back and watch it later if they'd like. So let me grab something real quick. There we go. Okay, so thanks, Stan. Appreciate it. Same way, Double A. What's good, brother? All right, so we're going to start with Brain FPV power board. In the past, when FPV was just going, every quad I ever built had a power board. And think of it as basically as a power distribution center. So you're going to have LiPo power. Let me grab a little pointing device here. LiPo power coming into it here on these big pads. And what it does is it takes that LiPo power, which could be anywhere from, say, 8 volts up to, what, 25, volts if you're running 6S or whatever. And it takes that LiPo power, it comes through the board filters the power, and then will give you a dedicated output for a 12 volt or a 5 volt. On any of your products that you have, whether it's a flight controller, a receiver, a video transmitter, or a camera, or ESCs, they're all going to require power. And so you would run power into this board and then power all those different components off of this board. And that's how, things when I first started FPV, you almost had to use a power distribution board for everything. In this one's case, you can actually hook your ESCs up to it if you've got individual ESCs, one on each arm. They've got spots right here where you can hook up for power to the ESC. Then you've got LiPo power. Then you've got your next ESC, another ESC, and another ESC. So you could hook up all your ESCs and your LiPo power into here, and then you would just run one little wire out of this connector to power up your flight controller. So the Brain stuff is smart. With Brain's power board and Brain's flight controller, they of course are known to work together, so all you got to do is plug in a lead and you've got power to your flight controller. But you do want to note, if you're not using a power board and flight controller that are made for each other, you want to make sure what input power does your flight controller want. Back in the day, all flight controllers were 5 volt input, and so you had to have a 5 volt regulated source from somewhere. Most of the time it would come from the power distribution board. Nowadays, a lot of these newer flight controllers can accept direct LiPo power. And so you have your choice, really, of where you want to power it. You could still only feed it 5 volts, and I believe most of them would work. Or you could feed it 12 volts from your 12 volt regulated output. Or you can feed it direct LiPo power in the case of, the flight controllers that it will accept it. One thing to note with that, if you're running a flight controller that's got a built-in OSD and you want to know voltage, you would want to run LiPo power into the flight controller. That way you can visually see what voltage you're running at. The next step in technology happened when flight controllers came out that you didn't even have to have a power distribution board anymore. And so grab one of those. Okay, so this is a CL Racing F4S, and it's a very good example of a flight controller where you can actually run your LiPo directly into it here at the back, right here. So you don't need that power distribution board any longer. This flight controller accepts that power directly to it, and then it offers a 5-volt output, or in this case also a 9-volt output, as well as full battery voltage output. So when you're thinking along the lines of all of these different parts, receiver, video transmitter, flight controller, and it starts to get confusing to you, think of it like this. One, what is the device doing? Okay, so we know a flight controller is like the brain of the whole bits. And what that means is it's got to not only regulate, in this case, power out to the different devices, but it's going to regulate the different signals that are going to the different devices. Well, if you think signal, your ESCs are going to have signal leads, and let's see, you've got a camera control wire that could have a signal lead. You've also got a video transmitter that you may want to do smart audio, so that's going to be a signal lead. Your camera may run through the flight controller for OSD, so that's a camera signal lead. And so just start thinking about what's each piece doing. You've got a camera, you know it's getting video from the outside world and it's shooting it out down a wire to something. You can either hook it to your flight controller, so you get your OSD, or you can hook it directly to the video line on the video transmitter. And boom, that's it. That's the only two places that camera should run. For power from the camera, today, again, most cameras will take LiPo. You're going to hear most people recommend powering them from the VTX if the VTX offers an output, and that's because VTX's voltage output is generally filtered. So on a camera, you've got 3 wires we'll worry about: the signal from the video, the power, and the ground. Make sure you get your power and ground to the correct amount, whether it wants 5 volts or 10 or whatever. And your signal lead is either going to go one of 2 places. It's going to go to the flight controller if you want OSD, or it's going to go directly to the video transmitter. Now take your next piece, the video transmitter. What is the video transmitter doing? It's receiving a signal from a camera, right? And then it's taking that signal and it's broadcasting it out. And that's how we can pick it up on our goggles. So if you think about this, it has to be getting that signal it's broadcasting from some place. And that's why you're going to hook your camera either directly to it for that signal, or you may hook your video transmitter to your flight controller as well, because the camera signal goes through the flight controller, out that, and to the video transmitter, and that's what gives you your ability to see your OSD in your screen. Okay, so that covers video transmitter and camera. What's the next piece we've got? We've got a receiver, right? For your FRsky, FlySky, crossfire, whatever protocol it is you're using, you've got a receiver. Now, that receiver's job is to basically get the signals you're sending out when you're making changes on your controller. So when you go full throttle on your controller, that receiver gets that signal and then transmits it to the flight controller. The flight controller then tells the ESCs, I'm getting full throttle, which the ESCs ramp up the motors, right? So the receiver is receiving signals from your handheld controller, but it actually also transmits those signals, and it does that to the flight controller. Now that is why you're going to hook up your receiver to the flight controller, so that basically what it's getting, it tells the flight controller. And you're going to hook that up generally on a special port for it, which is called S-Bus. In most of the time. For FRsky, FlySky, I believe, uses I-Bus, which is a very similar to S-Bus protocol. And then you have Crossfire. Crossfire is the only one of the two that does require a TX and an RX wire, and that's because it does two-way communication. It can transmit all sorts of different good information, useful information, and as well as it's a very stable link. So I personally run Crossfire on all my devices. That's just a little plug, I guess you could say, for that, but you know, I'm on TBS couch, so of course I'm going to plug crossfire. But anyway, anyhow, so your receiver's going to get that signal, and it has to tell the flight controller in some specific place, UART, what it is. And so that's why you've got, for instance, on this one, a dedicated S-bus port that's just for that receiver. If you ever hook up a receiver and you know you've got your connections right, you've got it bound, and you're not getting any response in beta flight, look up that receiver and that flight controller, and there's a very good chance you have to go from either the inverted or the uninverted output. That's a whole nother ball of wax, but just log that in your noggin. If you ever hook one up and it doesn't work, it probably has something to do with the inversion. Okay. So now we've got our flight controller, we've hooked up our video transmitter to our camera, or through our flight controller for the OSD to our camera. We've powered our VTX either from LiPo power or from the flight controller. We've powered our camera either from LiPo or the flight controller. And we've hooked our receiver up to our flight controller so that it can know what commands you want to send it to. So let's see what else we got left. I guess we got the ESCs, and so everybody says, you know, 4-in-1 versus 4 individuals. I personally have had real good luck out of the 4-in-1s, but if you're using a 4-in-1, make sure that that pinout on the little plug header, pay a lot of attention to that pinout when you go to plug it into your flight controller. Some of them might plug right in, but that does not mean the connections, the wires are in the right places. So make sure that you're drawing a little diagram and going one-to-one, make sure your wiring's correct. I've personally blown up several flight controllers by not taking my diligence and making sure every single connection was correct. So that's just a little pro tip there. Let's see. So for your ESCs, you're either going to connect them generally on the corners, or in this instance, they're just kind of one boom, 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 but they're all next to the corner. And they correspond to motor 1, 2, 3, and 4 if you've got your flight controller in the correct orientation. Now, the beauty of a flight controller like this, you don't have to have a PDB. It gives you the ability to have OSD in your goggles. You can hook your ESCs directly to it, and it's actually even got a selectable inverted or uninverted option on the back as well. So that what I was just talking about, if your receiver doesn't work, this flight controller would actually allow you to change that without you having to do some crazy wiring. Don't pay too much attention to what I'm saying. Just listen, and when you go and you get in this situation, you'll remember what I'm talking about, and you'll understand what I mean about crazy wiring. So always make sure you pay attention and see if your controller has that ability to switch from inverted or uninverted. Let's see what other questions we got from the chat. Let's see. Quite unpleasant experience with messy video. You can get ace some of these with the built-in. They do get messy video. I found that 1,000 microfarad cap with at least a 35-volt rating will help out quite a bit on that. And you want to get the leads as short as you can, and if you can, put it right on the video, right on your camera or your VTX power, and have it filter that. You don't have to filter right off LiPo. You can filter the power from the camera or the VTX side as well. Hey, Paul Butchie K, what's up, brother? Not so much, man. Just I did a little bit of an ESC swap on model, and now I've been doing some talking about the different components and how they work together. Something else to touch on, going back to the VTX and the receiver. Anybody who's ever flown with a group of racers or anything like that, and you'll hear, what channel are you on? Or go to R5 or whatever. If you're pretty new to the hobby, you may not know what the heck they're saying. So you do understand what they're saying. Each video transmitter can transmit on about 40 channels roughly. And the way that those are all deemed are A, B, C, D, E, F, or A, B, I think it's C, R, F. But you'll hear F1, R5, you know, go to C4. These are all different channels on your VTX. You can switch that with what's called smart audio, so you don't have to sit there and push that little button on your VTX all day. You can actually switch it either in Lewis scripts on your transmitter or in your goggles on the Betaflight OSD. And to get that working, well, actually there's a third way I'll talk about in a minute, but to get that working, you just hook up your audio wire from your TBS Unify to an open UART on the TX pad. Because the reason you want to use a TX is because the flight controller is transmitting to the video transmitter, right? It's telling that video transmitter what signal to be on. So you're transmitting from the flight controller, so you're hooking to a TX on the flight controller because you're transmitting from that flight controller. The third way to do it, and the way I've been doing it, if you're running Crossfire, you can hook your smart audio lead directly to channel 4 on your micro or your mini Crossfire receiver, and you can do it right in your Crossfire menu without having to, you just one click away and it's there. So that's super convenient. Super duper convenient. Hear me now and listen to me later. Randall, when you run into that instance I'm talking about, you'll know what I mean. You'll be like, oh man, Chris is what Chris was talking about. So, and I know I've buzzed through this. I just gave an overview of every component on a flight controller in 10 minutes, and it probably missed quite a bit. So guys, feel free to chime in the chat if you've got any suggestions or anything like that. But I just wanted somebody to be able to go back and get a quick rundown on what does what and why. And so TLDR version, you've got your flight controller, that's the brain. It's going to interpret all the signals from your transmitter receiver and tell each motor what to do. You've got your video transmitter that is receiving video from your camera and then broadcasting it out so that your goggles can pick it up. You've got your RX, your receiver from your transmitter, your handheld transmitter controller. That's receiving the signals you're doing with your thumbs and sending them into the flight controller, which then, of course, sends it out to the motors. And then you've got, what else? I guess that's it, right? I feel like I'm forgetting one, but I don't know. Anyway, hopefully this all makes sense. Take it one piece at a time and think of it this way. Is this what I'm working on? I'm working on this video transmitter. Is it sending or receiving? And that'll tell you real quick where you should hook it up to. Because once you go, well, it's a video transmitter and it's sending its signal out, then you know you need to go to an in on your flight controller or an in on your video transmitter sending signal out over the air. Means your camera needs to go into the video transmitter or into the flight controller and then out and into the VTX. So, sorry, I hope that all makes sense. If you guys have any more specific explanations you want, if you enjoyed this at all, let me know. If you don't want me to do stuff like this, let us know. We're going to kind of try a bunch of new ideas and see what really people are looking for, what really helps you guys, and especially what gets you excited about going out and flying. I know we're coming up on winter, so everybody get your tiny whoops ready. Make sure you're ready to go on that. Do4 says soldering everything nice is the most important. Do4, it's nice to have everything pretty, but a good solder joint might not be the prettiest joint. As long as it's a good joint, it's solid in my book. I'm randomfpv for the TBS Couch. Just doing another sign off today, and I hope and thank every single one of you guys for watching. Hope to see you next time. Have a good day.